Hi, I'm Una Mannion, and thank you very much to Limerick Literary Festival for this nomination for the Kate O'Brien Prize. It's a huge honour, not just because it's Kate O'Brien, but also the other women who've been nominated, whose writing I admire very much. So thank you. My book is A Crooked Tree, and I'm going to read a few excerpts. And just to give a little bit of background, the book is set in the summer of 1981. It's a family of 5 children with a single mum. The narrator is a 15-year-old girl called Libby, and the children they're children of an Irish immigrant. Their father has predeceased. He was estranged from the family and was predeceased. So I'm going to read from the very start of the book, which sort of sets up the catalyst event. It's the last day of school. They're driving home. The 5 kids are fighting in the car, and the mother's getting frustrated. The car skidded into the shoulder right where 252 crossed the turnpike. Out. Get out. My mom said it with her voice low, which let us know she meant it. Ellen reached across Thomas, opened the back door, and started to climb out. You can't leave her here, Marie said. It's getting dark. I'm going with her. She started to gather her school bag from the floor of the front. You'll do no such thing. Wait, said Thomas. He looked stricken, blaming himself for the teasing. Ellen was standing on the gravel verge of the overpass in her school pinafore, tennis shirt, and knee socks. Marie was opening her door when my mother threw the car into gear and accelerated forward. I looked back. Ellen was facing away from us, looking down over the bridge where columns of cars funneled along the turnpike. Mom, don't, please, Thomas said, but she didn't answer. We sped up 252 into the national park and then turned west toward Valley Forge Mountain. Ahead of us, the sun had fallen below the fields. You can't leave her. It's dark, Marie said. We were still 5 or 6 miles from home. I hadn't said anything to make my mother stop. We careened down the road, went through the covered bridge, past farmland and fences. Beside us, the shadows of dogwoods blurred in the dark as my mother kept driving, each tree hemmed in a halo of white where the bracts had fallen. And so the child left on the road puts out her thumb and gets picked up by the wrong person, and that becomes sort of, I suppose, the precipitating action of the book. I'm going to read just from a moment about midway through the book where Libby, the narrator, is remembering a time working with her dad before he died with her brother. Their father cut grass and they worked with him. I remembered a day at the cat lady's when we were working with my dad. She lived alone in an old Victorian-style house with at least 40 cats. My dad had looked after her garden for over 15 years, since before I was born. She'd been trying to sell her house for a long time, and a few summers ago it had finally sold, even with all the cats hanging around lying on counters and sitting in sinks. When she was moving, she hired my father to do some work inside, pulling up carpets and taking old furniture to the dump. Marie, Thomas, and I all went to help with the job. It was late July and hot, well into the 90s. We'd peeked through her windows before to look at the cats, but had never been inside. The heat and stench were stifling. The ammonia from the cat pee burned our eyes. I choked and air squeezed out of my lungs. It was a 3-story house and the cats had been everywhere. To make it worse, she had turned off the air conditioning. The mean bitch, Marie muttered. We started on the 3rd floor where it was hottest and tried to pull out the small carpet nails at the edges. Dad told us to go back to the truck and get gloves. The fumes were in my mouth and throat. When we rolled up the first carpet, which was damp, the floorboards were rotten underneath. Get out of the house and wash your hands and faces at the outside spigot. Get soap in the truck, Dad told us. Thomas, you stay with me. He said that the odor would never come out. The new owners would have to take up the floorboards. Marie and I sat outside for hours saying very little, but Dad and Thomas finished the work alone, carrying rolled up rotten carpets and heaving them into the back of the truck. Thomas worked intently, staggering under the weight and smell, never wanting to let my father down. He was 14. I sat on the curb with Marie and looked over at the garden that my father had planted for the cat lady years earlier. That year's tomatoes were ripe and red on their vines against her deck. Dad had canes supporting them with soft string so as not to damage the tender stalks. The cat lady had a Venus de Milo statue in the garden, a naked woman about as high as my hip with missing arms. Marie walked over and kicked her to the ground and came back and sat down next to me on the curb. Her face was dirty and streaked. "Fucking people think they know something about culture," she said. And I'm going to just read from the very end of the book, from the start of the last chapter, and it's not really a spoiler at all. That summer, when I so desperately tried to reel us all in, I didn't understand the forces spinning us apart. I didn't know it was my last summer on the mountain, that I wouldn't live with my mother or my siblings again. Even without knowing all that was to come, I already wanted to go back to before, to hold us all together in the car, driving through Pennsylvania Dutch, so squished and inseparable, I couldn't tell where my skin ended and my sister's began. I wanted to be in the back of Dad's pickup truck, us and the machines, after a day cutting lawns, driving home, and the air cooling us as we drove, grass blades and leaves in a swirl around us, or lying on the living room floor in our separate spaces, listening to old reel-to-reel tapes of a time when we were looking forward to who we would be in the future. I wanted to hold us there together, summer evenings in the driveway playing kick the can against the dark, calling from azaleas and dogwoods running the trails. I wanted to be on the moss hill in the kingdom, smoking Charlotte's Kents with sage, or looking up through the canopy of a maple in October, wearing a sweater against the cold, wading through leaf fall. I wanted Beatrice on my bed, curling my hair, needing something from me, Ellen coiled beside us, wound against the world. I wanted Marie back across the room from me, making sense of it all, and Thomas in his room, looking up at the spinning universe. Even now, sometimes I want to be driving down 252, and Ellen's tired head falls on my shoulder, and I don't shrug it off, and she stays there with us in the car. To drive again, all of us together through the covered bridge, to feel the wooden planks beneath our wheels, to climb the mountain, knowing the turns by heart, by the feel of them, to be going home. Thank you very much. Thank you.